My name is Dorothy Mae Coleman, and I never thought my own son would stand in a doorway and block me from stepping inside his house. But that is exactly what happened. I stood on that porch, my hands shaking, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would jump out of my chest. My son Marcus stood in front of me, his arms stretched wide across the doorway like a wall. His eyes were cold, his jaw was tight. This was the same boy I raised alone after his father passed. The same boy I rocked to sleep, fed with my own hands, and prayed over every single night. "Mama, you need to leave," he said. "You need to leave right now." I could not believe the words coming out of his mouth. Behind him, I could hear his wife crying softly in the kitchen. My chest felt tight, my eyes filled with tears. How did we get here? How did my own flesh and blood turn against me to protect the very woman who tried to steal everything I worked for? That question will be answered soon. But first, let me take you back to where it all began. Before we continue, let us know in the comment section where in the world you're tuning in from. We love seeing how far our stories reach. And if this story speaks to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. My name is Dorothy Mae Coleman. I am 68 years old, and for 32 years I worked for the City Water Authority. I started as a clerk, filing papers and answering phones. By the time I retired, I was the manager of the whole department. I earned every dollar I ever saved. I paid off my house with my own hands, dollar by dollar, year by year. That house on Maple Grove Street was more than wood and brick. It was proof that a poor girl from a small town could build something real. My husband Robert passed away 11 years ago. Heart attack, sudden, no warning. After he was gone, it was just me and our son Marcus. I raised him the best way I knew how. I taught him to work hard, to be honest, and to treat people with kindness. He grew up to be a good man, or so I believed. He went to college, got a job in sales, and a few years back, he married a woman named Yvette. Yvette was smart. She had a good head for numbers and words. She worked as a paralegal at a law firm downtown. When Marcus first brought her home, I liked her. She was polite. She called me Miss Dorothy, and always brought a dish to family dinners. I thought my son had found himself a good wife. But a few years into their marriage, Marcus and Yvette decided to open a restaurant together. They called it Sunset Table. It sat on a busy corner downtown, with big windows and a shiny sign. I remember going to the opening night. I was so proud. I told everyone at church about my son's new restaurant. But restaurants are hard business. The bills came fast. Rent, workers, food, insurance. Within a year, I started hearing whispers from family members that things were not going well. Marcus never told me directly. He was too proud. But a mother knows when her child is struggling, even if he does not say a word. I did not know just how bad it had gotten. I did not know how far Yvette was willing to go to fix it. It was a regular Tuesday morning when my whole world changed. I had an appointment at my bank to update some paperwork on my savings account. Nothing special, just routine business I did every few months since I retired. I walked into the bank the same way I always did, greeting the tellers by name, taking my usual seat while I waited for the branch manager. His name was Mr. Harold Whitfield. He had managed that branch for years, and he always treated me kindly. But that morning, when he called me into his office, his face looked different. Serious, careful, like a man about to deliver bad news. "Miss Coleman," he said, folding his hands on his desk, "I need to speak with you about something unusual that came through our system." I sat up straight. "What is it, Mr. Whitfield?" He turned his computer screen toward me. "Last week, our office received a power of attorney document. It names someone as your legal agent, giving them authority over your bank accounts, your property, and your financial decisions." My stomach dropped. I never signed any power of attorney. He looked at me carefully. The document has your signature on it, Miss Coleman, and it names your daughter-in-law, Yvette Coleman, as your agent. The room felt like it was spinning. I gripped the arms of my chair to steady myself. That is not possible, I whispered. I never signed anything like that. I never even discussed it with anyone in my family. Mr. Whitfield's face grew even more serious. That is why I wanted to speak with you directly, before we processed anything further. Something about this document does not sit right with me. I have worked in banking for over 20 years, Miss Coleman, and I have seen fraud before. I think you need to look into this very carefully. I sat there, frozen, staring at the paper on his screen. My own signature, or something that looked close enough to fool a stranger, sat at the bottom of a document that would hand my entire life's work over to another person, a person I had trusted, a person who sat at my dinner table and called me family. My hands trembled as I asked him one simple question. Mr. Whitfield, who filed this document? Where did it come from? He looked at me with sad eyes, the kind of look a person gives you right before they tell you something that will break your heart. It was filed at the county recorder's office, he said slowly, under your daughter-in-law's name, using her credentials as a paralegal. I could not breathe. My own daughter-in-law had somehow gotten a fake document with my signature on it, giving her control over everything I owned. My house, my savings, everything Robert and I built together for over 3 decades. I did not say another word. I stood up, thanked Mr. Whitfield, and walked out of that bank in a daze. But deep inside, a fire was starting to burn. I was going to find out exactly what was going on, no matter what it cost me. I had no idea that this discovery was only the beginning of a battle that would test my strength, break my heart, and one day bring my own son to stand in a doorway, blocking me out of his life. I walked out of that bank with my heart pounding and my mind racing. I did not go home right away. I got in my car and drove straight to the county recorder's office. I needed to see this with my own eyes. I needed proof. The office was a tall gray building downtown, filled with long hallways and quiet rooms. I walked up to the front desk and asked the clerk if there were any documents filed under my name. She typed for a few minutes, then looked up at me with a puzzled expression. Miss Coleman, there is a deed transfer request filed here, dated 3 weeks ago, she said. It was submitted along with the power of attorney we have on file. My knees went weak. A deed transfer? For what property? She turned the screen toward me. There it was, in black and white. My house. My home on Maple Grove Street. The very house Robert and I bought when Marcus was just a baby. The house where I raised my son, where I buried my husband's memory into every wall and every floorboard. Someone was trying to take it from me. I asked the clerk to print me a copy of everything on file. My hands shook as I held the papers. At the bottom of the deed transfer form was a notary stamp, the kind that is supposed to prove a signing was done properly, in front of a real notary public, with real identification checked. But something about the stamp looked strange to me. The ink was too dark. The seal was slightly crooked, like it had been pressed in a hurry. I did not know much about notary stamps, but I knew enough to know something was wrong. I folded the papers, thanked the clerk, and left the building with my jaw clenched tight. That night, I did not sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea going cold beside me, staring at those papers until the words blurred together. Yvette's signature was on the notary line, claiming she had witnessed my signing. But I was never there. I never signed anything. My own daughter-in-law had used her paralegal training to fake it all. The next morning, I called an old friend from church, Miss Beatrice Franklin, who had gone through a similar situation years before with her late husband's estate. She gave me the name of a lawyer, a woman named Eleanor Prescott, who worked in estate and property law. I called her office the same day, and got an appointment for that Friday. When I sat down across from Eleanor Prescott, I laid all the papers on her desk. She read through them slowly, her brow furrowing more with each page. "Miss Coleman," she said finally, "this notary stamp is not registered anywhere in this state. I checked while you were reading through the documents. Whoever created this stamp made it up completely. It does not belong to any licensed notary in this county." I felt a mix of relief and heartbreak all at once. Relief because now I had proof this was fraud. Heartbreak because the person who committed that fraud was someone I loved, someone I welcomed into my family with open arms. "What do I do now?" I asked her. Eleanor folded her hands and looked at me with steady eyes. "We are going to build a case, Miss Coleman. A strong one. We will gather every piece of evidence, verify the forged signature, expose the fake notary stamp, and file for an emergency revocation of this power of attorney before that deed transfer can be finalized. But I need you to trust me, and I need you to stay quiet about this for now." "Quiet?" I asked. "You want me to say nothing to my own son?" "For now, yes," she said gently. "If your daughter-in-law finds out we are building a case against her, she may rush to finalize the transfer before we can stop it, or she may destroy evidence. We need time to do this the right way, so it holds up in court." It was one of the hardest things I ever had to do, but I agreed. For 6 long weeks, I lived a double life. On the outside, I was just Dorothy, going to church, visiting with friends, having Sunday dinners with Marcus and Yvette like nothing was wrong. On the inside, I was gathering bank statements, handwriting samples, old documents with my real signature, anything Eleanor asked for to build our case. Every Sunday dinner at Marcus and Yvette's house became harder to sit through. I watched Yvette pass the mashed potatoes and laugh at Marcus's jokes, all while knowing what she had done behind my back. I watched my son look at his wife with love in his eyes, never suspecting a thing. Some nights, I cried in my car before I even made it out of their driveway, wondering how I would ever tell him the truth without breaking his heart. Eleanor worked fast. She hired a handwriting expert who confirmed what I already knew, that the signature on the power of attorney did not match mine in several important ways. She tracked down the notary license number on the stamp and proved it belonged to no one. She pulled financial records that showed the restaurant, Sunset Table, was drowning in debt, nearly $40,000 behind on loans and unpaid bills. It became painfully clear why Yvette had done what she did. She was desperate to save the restaurant, desperate enough to try to steal from the one person who trusted her the most. By the 5th week, Eleanor filed an emergency motion with the court to revoke the fraudulent power of attorney and freeze any pending property transfers on my home. It was urgent because we discovered something that made my blood run cold. The deed transfer was scheduled to be finalized in just 9 days. If we had waited any longer, if Mr. Whitfield at the bank had not caught that first red flag, my house could have legally changed hands before I even knew what hit me. I remember sitting in Eleanor's office when she got the call from the courthouse. She hung up the phone and looked at me with a small, tired smile. "Miss Coleman, the judge granted the emergency revocation. The power of attorney is void, and the deed transfer is frozen. Your home is safe." I broke down crying right there in her office. Weeks of fear and betrayal poured out of me all at once. But even as the relief washed over me, I knew the hardest part was still ahead. The legal case was almost done, but now I had to face my family with the truth. I decided I could not keep pretending anymore. I could not sit through one more Sunday dinner acting like everything was fine. I needed to go to my son's house and tell him everything, face to face, mother to son. I needed him to hear the truth from me before it came out in a courtroom or in the news. I picked up the phone that Thursday evening and called Marcus. "Marcus, honey, I need to come by tomorrow. We need to talk about something important." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then his voice, quiet and careful. "Is everything okay, Mama?" "We will talk tomorrow," I said. "I love you, son." I hung up the phone with my heart heavy and my hands trembling. I had no idea that when I stepped onto that porch the next day, my own son would stand in the doorway and try to shut me out of his life forever. Friday morning came slow and heavy, like the sky itself knew something hard was about to happen. I got dressed carefully, put on my good blue dress, the one I wore to church on special Sundays. I wanted to look strong, even though my heart was breaking inside my chest. I drove to Marcus and Yvette's house with Eleanor's folder of papers sitting on the passenger seat beside me, proof of everything that had happened. When I pulled into the driveway, I sat in my car for a long moment, just breathing. I prayed a quiet prayer, asking God to give me strength for whatever was about to happen. Then I stepped out, walked up the porch steps, and knocked on the door. Marcus opened it. His face looked tired, worried. Behind him, I could hear Yvette moving around in the kitchen, and I could hear that her breathing sounded fast and nervous, like she already knew why I had come. "Marcus," I said gently, "I need to come in. We need to talk, all three of us." But before I could take a single step, Marcus moved forward. He stepped directly in front of me and stretched both his arms across the doorway, blocking the entrance completely. It was the same moment I told you about at the very beginning of this story, the moment that broke something inside of me. "Mama, you need to leave," he said, his voice shaking. "Whatever this is, you need to leave right now." "Marcus, please," I said, tears filling my eyes. "Let me explain. Let me show you what I found." "I already know," he said quietly. "Yvette told me you have been talking to a lawyer. She told me you are trying to ruin us." My heart sank. Yvette had gotten to him first. She had already painted herself as the victim, and now my own son saw me as the enemy. "Son." "She forged my signature," I said, my voice breaking. "She created a fake power of attorney. She tried to take my house, the house your father and I worked our whole lives for. I have proof, Marcus, real proof." His eyes filled with tears, but his arms stayed stretched across that doorway like a wall between us. "I can't hear this right now, Mama. Please, just go." I stood there on that porch, staring at my son, the boy I raised with my own two hands, now standing guard over the very person who tried to destroy me. It was the most painful moment of my entire life. But I remembered what Eleanor told me weeks before. The truth does not need to be forced. Sometimes it just needs time to breathe. "Okay, Marcus," I said softly. "I will go. But I want you to know something. I love you more than anything in this world. And no matter what happens next, that will never change." I turned and walked back to my car, my whole body trembling. I did not look back, even though every part of me wanted to. The following week, everything changed quickly. Eleanor filed the full case with the district attorney's office, presenting all the evidence, the forged signature, the fake notary stamp, and the financial records showing the restaurant's massive debt. The police opened an investigation into Yvette. Because she used her paralegal license and training to commit the fraud, the case moved fast. Investigators found more troubling evidence too, showing she had used the same fake notary stamp on at least one other document months earlier, trying to secure a business loan using false property information. Within 2 months, Yvette was formally charged with forgery and identity theft. The law firm she worked for fired her the same week the charges became public. The state paralegal board opened its own investigation and eventually stripped her of her professional certification, meaning she could never work in that field again. I did not celebrate any of it. Even though she hurt me deeply, watching someone lose everything is never something to feel joy about. I only felt a heavy sadness, thinking about how desperation and fear can push a person to do terrible things to the people who love them most. Marcus did not speak to me for almost 3 months. Those were some of the darkest days of my life. I would sit by my phone some evenings, hoping it would ring. I wrote him letters I never sent, filled with memories of him as a little boy, riding his bike down Maple Grove Street, laughing in the front yard, while his father grilled burgers on Saturday afternoons. But slowly, something began to shift. As the court case moved forward, and Marcus saw the evidence with his own eyes, the truth became impossible to deny. He saw the handwriting analysis. He saw the fake notary license number. He saw the financial records showing just how deep the restaurant's debt had gotten, and how his wife had been secretly meeting with a real estate agent to discuss selling my house once the transfer went through. The marriage could not survive the truth. Yvette moved out of their home while awaiting her court sentencing, and Marcus filed for divorce a few weeks later. It was a painful, heavy season for him, losing his marriage and facing the reality of what his wife had done to his own mother. One rainy afternoon in early autumn, almost 4 months after that day on the porch, I heard a knock at my door. When I opened it, Marcus stood there, soaked from the rain, his eyes red and swollen from crying. "Mama," he said, his voice cracking, "I am so sorry." I did not say a word. I just opened my arms, and my son fell into them like he was a little boy again. We stood in that doorway for a long time, holding each other, crying together, letting years of hurt and fear finally wash away. "I should have listened to you," he said. "I should have trusted you from the very beginning." "You were trying to protect your wife," I told him. "That does not make you a bad person, Marcus. It makes you human. We all make mistakes when we are scared of losing someone we love." Rebuilding our relationship did not happen overnight. It took many long talks at my kitchen table, many quiet Sunday dinners where we slowly relearned how to trust each other again. We set new boundaries, ones built on honesty instead of silence. Marcus started coming by every week, sometimes just to sit with me and drink coffee, sometimes to help me fix things around the house that Robert used to handle. Yvette eventually pleaded guilty in court, receiving probation, community service, and a permanent mark on her record that closed the door on her paralegal career forever. I never wished her harm. I only hoped that somewhere down the road, she would find a way to heal from whatever brokenness led her down that path in the first place. As for me, I kept my house. I kept my savings, but more importantly, slowly and gently, I got my son back. It taught me something I carry with me every single day now. Family is not something you should ever take for granted, and trust, once broken, takes real patience and real love to rebuild. If you take one thing from my story, let it be this: protect your heart, but never stop believing in second chances. Stay strong when the people who are supposed to protect you fail to do so. And always remember, kindness and truth may take time, but in the end, they are the strongest tools you will ever have. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it touched your heart in any way, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today.